Peace Collective. Today we are talking about the surrender to the future. Okay. Right now, the collective, you could be experiencing panic attacks, some type of like anxiety attack. Things can feel overwhelming, right? I've been experiencing this last night. There's this beautiful upliftment that's happening to the collective and those that have been doing the work. So you could be having experiences, right, that are getting you prepared to how your gifts are going to be manifested more in your reality. Not only your gifts, right, but this is reorienting you to where you actively belong, right? And this is with the connections that you're experiencing on the earth plane, also with the connections that you're experiencing, in the etheric and the astral realms, okay? So, understand that if you are having these shifts happening at this particular moment, that's a beautiful thing. Also understand that opposition is opposition. I'm not going to spend too much time on opposition, but I will sit here and say that as we are going through these shifts and these changes, this is typically a moment that requires a lot of stillness from us. It requires a lot of energy. Usually, these are moments where opposition will try to take advantage, and try to attack you. Okay. I've been noticing, them trying to like whisper different things. That's If something has to attack you when you're so called in a weakened state or in a vulnerable state, it lets you know it has no strength. Okay. So if you're feeling a certain kind of way, you can always call on Archangel Uriel to clear the space. I would definitely sit here and say, listen to Violet Flame, also put on music for like cutting cords with Archangel Michael. This is very protective. You can call on Archangel Raphael to just make sure that your roads are being structured as these energetic shifts and alignments are taking place within your life. Now, mind you, I don't feel like those shifts are causing you any anxiety. I feel like for whoever you are, you're well seasoned. You're well seasoned in your spirituality. You're well seasoned in your journey. And being really well seasoned or really grounded, really rooted within yourself is ultimately what I'm trying to say is how to handle these experiences. This isn't something that's new to you. This is something that you and your team have been working on for many years, right? So the panic attacks or anxiety attacks is you feeling something trying to basically kind of like snuff you out, right? And they can't. You're protected, right? But you are sensing the energy and the intention that they're coming with. This could have disturbed your sleep, different types of things. This is different. It manifests in different kind of ways, right? So whether it's anxiety, whether it's shakiness, whether it's weakness within the body, kind of like mild panic attacks, anxiety attacks. This is how it's all manifesting, and these are their ill attempts, oppositions, ill attempts to not to keep you in a particular position because they know you're breaking free. Okay, now I'm going into the reading because I did pull a couple cards and I am channeling this message with Archangel Raphael. The first card is, the High Priestess. To me, this is speaking to, following your intuition. This is where the future is still unknown. It's unraveling, right? But you're so centered. You're rooted within yourself. You're rooted within the mysteries, of like your consciousness, the divine, the all that it's all. You're constantly exploring the depths of your subconscious and your consciousness. And I think it's in a really beautiful place to be, especially when things are looking uncertain or you don't know what's going to play out, in the path ahead. Okay. Um, and I feel like there's a really deep rooted, energy within yourself that you are tapping into, and you're okay with the mystery. You're okay with I feel like you finally got into a place where you're okay, where it's okay if you don't know what the future road is going to look like because you have this like innate knowing that's going to be beautiful regardless. You've grown so much in your own personal journey already, right? There's no way that you're going backwards. You refuse to allow yourself to move backwards and you have this security regardless of the uncertain excuse me, the uncertainty that may be presenting itself to you at this particular moment. You have the hangman. The hangman comes out next. And to me, this speaks all about surrender. This speaks to, the aspect of, surrendering to the divine, surrendering to the roads ahead for your highest good, right? And again, for the high priestess to come out there, this is speaking to you following your intuition, being very rooted, right, within self. I'm getting a very like deeply rooted type of energy with this person. Whoever I'm reading for, the energy that I'm tapping into. And so the hangman doesn't necessarily mean that you're in an uncomfortable position. I do feel like this is an aspect of letting go of control. Thank you. An aspect of letting go of control and truly surrendering to the blessings that are ultimately meant to unfold, and the lessons that allow you to refine self. But they're making it clear it's lessons that are rooted in tranquility. You are no longer in a place where you are experiencing trauma that has gone out of your life, out of your energetic field. Now, again, it doesn't mean that things won't try it, but you have discernment, right? To now where you will move away actively from those things, okay? And you are aligning with the good. You're realizing that you don't have to have conversations with everyone. You don't need to tell people about your business. You're realizing that your space and your energy is sacred. And that creates a certain energy about you as well, too, that, you know, if a malevolent spirit is crazy enough to try it, it's kind of like you just look at it like, and it knows that you're protected, right? It can't even mess with you when you're not in like a vulnerable state. But even if it's messing with you in a vulnerable state, you know that you are protected by the divine. And it's very much kind of like ill-fated attempts because it's not going to work. Okay. They just don't want to see you go into your rightful position. Um, and yeah, they're irritated. So moving on. And congratulations on the surrender. It's really going to be beautiful. The next card that you got is the Four of Wands. Okay. So this is saying that you've almost made it to the countryside, right? This is saying that, you basically have come out on the other side. And it is a time of celebration, right? Where you're going to start celebrating with community. I do feel like this is more so, like your wounded self, right? Like connecting with like aspects of your higher self, and the higher self being able to steer your life, right? As the wounded self gets, to rest, right? So this does allow the shift of energy to change on a root chakra experience. That means that your life starts to look different because the wounded self is now resting. The wounded self is now allowing itself to integrate, right, with with the light body as it starts to repair and heal itself, right, with in connection with the divine, right, because we never do this alone. You have the King of Wands. It's kind of like a countryman, type of energy. But what this is speaking to me more than anything is your divine masculine. Now, whether you are connected with your divine masculine, physically or just energetically, I know our connections as a soul, right? To be one. You have two counterparts. You have the divine feminine, divine masculine. And so, whether you're connected with your partner or not, he's watching over you, right? He's making sure that, as you've been surrendering in this process to, what's unfolding for the good, he's making sure that only the good aligns with you. He's making sure that you are protected, as much as he can interfere in this process, right? Be a guardian, so to speak. Right. And so he is watching over his divine feminine. And again, this can be from a very spiritual standpoint. It doesn't mean that, you are connected with your eternal flame. And I want to say here, okay, spirit saying don't. We'll get into that another time if it's meant to. Um, with that, he understands that the work that you're doing is actually very, very important to the future bloodlines of descendants that come through your bloodline. Because the next card that came up is Six of Cups. Now, he's watching over because I feel like what's happening with the Six of Cups energy, it's usually speaking to someone going back to memories. And Archangel Raphael is saying like it's memory associated. So as you're in the surrender and you have your divine masculine, there are those energies, from the past, right, that caused the wound itself. And this is what opposition is tapping into. They're using your past experiences, your traumas, right, to now try to whisper, negative, negative. Yeah, it's something just tried to mess with me now. negative outcomes for your future, right? And trying to make it seem like, oh, like this is a positive road. No, it's not positive. Okay. They're trying to use scare tactics, and guess what? It's not going to work. Okay. Um, and you're very in tune, right? So, opposition trying to use something from the past that's just not going to work. We're leaving the past where it's at. And so, your divine masculine is very much on guard. You know, I don't feel like all the experiences or certain things can be stopped, right? As far as like, attacks fully. And I'm explain why. Because they allow us to be in tune with what's around. And I don't even want to sit here and say that the spiritual attacks can't be stopped, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna find the better words, the right words to say it. It's you're not living in a cocoon of ignorance, right? So, since you're not living in a cocoon of ignorance, even though you are choosing to align with the higher roads, who you are spiritually, you're very much aware of all the energies that are around. And in that, you are not ignorant, okay? So, it doesn't mean that spiritual attacks have to be a consistent thing in your life. They're not, right? But you are very much in tune to the realms and you can see the negative, you can see the positive. You align with the positive, right? When your light is on, you have different energy forces that try to attach to you. Now, because you are powerful, because you are in tune and in line with the divine, with the creator of the all that it's all, you are not touchable. They can't mess with you. But are the energies going to cease to exist? No. Okay. Unless you are in the creator's arms at home frequency. Okay. And you've made the climb back up. I think we need to be very honest and realistic with ourselves that this is a plane and it's being cleaned up. But right now, there are malevolent spirits that are running this plane and they don't want to be seen or acknowledged because they feel like they can just attach to people and they can't. See, when you are occupying your space, you are no longer a victim of spiritual attacks, but you sense what's trying it. You sense what's around. See, there's a difference in sensing it and being a victim of it because you know that, those malevolent spirits are looking for fear. They're looking for, impulsivity, anger. They're looking to be fed. You are not feeding them. Okay. And so when they're trying you, they're trying to be fed. They're trying to feed off of you energetically. And so this is why your divine masculine is very much on guard. Okay. Um, Energetically speaking, because it's trying to use the wounding of the past, but the wounding of the past is no longer in alignment with who you've become because you've transmuted that. You've done the healing work. And in this, the healing work that you are doing is also changing the pathways for your descendants. You are showing people, you're being that example of how to deal with malevolent spirits. You're being the example of how to align with divinity, right? And this is a vibration where malevolent spirits can't even access you. But it doesn't mean that you don't sense them around. It doesn't mean that you don't see them around. Okay. So the Page of Pentacles, this is you diving deep into your studies. Of course, this could be, very financial and things like that as well too. But this is you just diving deep in. And when I say studies, this is I feel like the study of self. Okay, can we make the study of self a thing? The study of our consciousness, the ever evolving consciousness of self. This is where and I do feel like you going into the depths of who you are is going to be really beautiful. It's going to be really brilliant. It's going to be very prosperous, and this is you. I am getting metaphysical studies, right? Not necessarily book wise. This is going to be like shown to you, taught to you. Definitely get into the books as well too if you feel called. I don't want to sit here and say don't get into your metaphysical studies, right? But there's going to be information that's coming through from the divine because you've been deeply excavating and clearing out room of the negative for the good to come in, right? So that's where you're at. Then you have Three of Cups, which is very much a celebration, okay? And I feel like this is all that's happening today because these are the energies of today. It doesn't mean that everything is going to play out um, exactly, all of this is going to play out in one day. But this is where, like, it's aligning again. You are in your high priestess energy. I can tell you this energy has been very strong. And this is an aspect of celebration. So these are the imprints that are happening at this moment as this is going to start shaping and allowing your reality, your physical reality to unfold. And the next card that came out was the world, you know, and in this world card, I feel like this is speaking to walking through a portal, walking through, into a new existence. And you owe it to yourself because this message came through, and I feel like it's very much in alignment. This came through for me last night, but it's you owe it to yourself to now explore. You're in an exploring stage of your life, right? And again, this is where, like I've been talking about, exploring the depths of your consciousness. And they gave it to me in a very cute way. It was like if you were a cabbage, a cabbage has every right. It owes it to itself. I love cabbage, and maybe it's just why I came through because them Asian videos, all right, with them shorts, them reels, and to be showing them Asian people cooking that cabbage and turning it into kimchi and all, delicious. So you owe it to yourself. Let's use the cabbage as an example. The cabbage owes it to itself, to explore all its ridges. It's like bumps, right? The texture, it it owes it to itself to explore all the different pathways that are within it, after like the first layers, right? What are the shapes of those pathways? What do they see? Where do those pathways lead? And obviously everything rooted in divinity, right? I want to make it short. You're not going to explore pathways and degradation. No. Um, you know, the the cabbage owes it to itself, you know what I mean, to see how, its texture changes, how it softens up, what makes it softer, what seasonings pair well with it. You're in a particular point in time where you're exploring. And this is all part of your destiny, right? And if you don't like that seasoning, if it's not pairing well with your cabbage, if it's not pairing well with your consciousness, you move on, right? Is this softening you up, in a good way, right? You've already gone through the hardships of, basically being like meat and being pounded, into submission. Now be like the cabbage, be like the vegetable that allows itself to have a steam bath and it just relaxes and the layers of it unfolds, right? This is where you're moving into, right? It's the exploration of self from a very higher octave. And if you don't feel like aligning with something, don't. If something is telling you that this does not feel like it's a good exploration, don't explore it. But if you feel like, you know what, I am uncertain of this, it feels like it might be good, but I haven't explored this before, I'm not sure what this will provide, you owe it to yourself to explore that pathway if it's rooted in divinity, if it's rooted in tranquility, and to see what it opens up within you. This is where you are entering this stage of your life, and it's a really beautiful thing. So be like the green cabbage that follows the hearts, be like the purple cabbage that follows the crown chakra. You're in a really beautiful season of becoming and exploring. So thank you so much for listening to this message from me in spirit. Y'all take care.